DreAllDay.com.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is how to free yourself from sunk costs. If you don't even know what that is, I will explain it in a minute, but I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that here in today's episode. Before I even get into that, first of all, let me inform everybody or remind you that I have a daily motivation text that I send out for free every single day. If you want to receive it, all you got to do is text me at this number, 305-384-6894. That's the same number I'll be texting you from every day. And when you text me there, I guarantee every day you're going to receive a message that's going to keep you focused, sharp, and on point for the day in front of you. That number, once again, 305-384-6894. Now, this topic, how to free yourself from the sunk costs. Let's get a definition of what a sunk cost is, because I think maybe some of you may have never heard the phrase before or aren't familiar with what exactly it means, and I want us all to be on the same page. So here's the definition via Britannica Encyclopedia. A sunk cost is a cost that has already been incurred and that cannot be recovered. In other words, the money is spent, the money has been spent, the time has been used, the effort has been given. This is me talking here. And you can't get that money, the time, or the effort back. Okay, that's what a sunk cost is. Now let's continue the definition. In economic decision making, sunk costs are treated as bygone and are not taken into consideration when deciding whether to continue an investment project. Close quote. So that's the end of the definition. In other words, a sunk cost is something that has already been paid. You've already put the time, the money, the attention, the energy, the focus. You've already output that. You cannot get it back. And therefore, because that cost has already been incurred, it should not be factored into what you do or don't do moving forward, because you can't get it back no matter what you do. So today is about freeing yourself from the mentality of the sunk, of thinking that you need to do something just because you've already invested in it. In other words, to give you an example, if somebody's in a relationship that they hate, but you've been in it for so long, you're going to stay in it just because you've been in it for so long. That's a bad decision-making rubric. You don't keep doing something just because you've already been doing it. They call this the sunk cost fallacy. It is a logical fallacy that you should keep doing something just because you're already invested. Just because we've been doing this for 5 years, we need to keep doing it the same way for the year number 6. No, that is a terrible decision-making process. And today I'm going to help free your mind from that. So even if you never heard of a sunk cost, now that I've described it, you probably can think of some sunk costs that maybe you have been telling yourself that you should stick with just because you're already invested in it. Don't do that. But as I explain this, you'll understand it a lot better. Point number 1, topic once again today is how to free yourself from sunk costs and how to remove the sunk cost fallacies from your mind. Number 1, there's a study that showed that in the NBA and in the NFL, players who have higher salaries usually get more playing time, even when the study controlled for performance levels. In other words, if there are 2 players on a team and one player is making 10 times as much money as the other player, that the player who's making more money, even when those 2 players are performing at about equal level, the player making more money usually gets more playing time. In other words, I'm explaining that to tell you this, that the NBA and the NFL, being big organizations as they are, and the teams within being big organizations, they are just as susceptible to the sunk cost fallacy as you are. So a player who is making $10 million a year and a player making $1 million a year, if the $1 million player is outperforming the $10 million player, at least marginally, the $10 million player will still get more opportunities in the big picture than the $1 million player, simply because they're making $10 million. Well, we don't know why, but that's the one variable in the study, that even when they control for performance levels, that's what happens. The higher salary player usually just gets more chances to perform. And their conclusion of the study was it's because they're making more money, because everything else was controlled for. And I get scholastic athletes often telling me similar situations all the time, even though in school you're not making 10 million or even 1 million, even $1 for playing your sport. The point being, the player who has more seniority, or the player who the coach has bought into more for whatever reason, or the program has bought into more for whatever reason, gets more opportunity than the unknown individual. I do 100% believe that this is true. This is the sunk cost fallacy in action, that just because you've invested more in thing A, even though thing B is doing better than thing A, you keep trying thing A simply because you already invested so much in it. All right, this is a dumb way of thinking. It is actually a dumb way of not thinking, because if people were actually thinking, they wouldn't be doing this. And I 100% believe that this happens all the time with people in a lot of different spaces. This also occurs when people, as I gave an example earlier, when people stay in dead relationships or keep working at dead end jobs just because they've been there so long already. All right, how many of you have ever done this? You're working at a job for a while, and since you have been there so long, even though you hate the job, you kept working there because you're like, well, I've been here so long, I don't feel like starting at another job or applying for a different job. I've been here all this time, I might as well just keep working there. I've been with this male or female that's been in this relationship for so long, let me just stay in it, and I might as well just stick it out. I've been here all this time already. How many of you have ever done this? I'll give you an example of a time that I did this. I went to there's this place down here in South Florida called Now's Berry Farm, where you can pick your own strawberries, and there's like a big strawberry patch that they have out there. You can just walk down the rows of strawberries, pick your own strawberries. Now, that part is usually never super duper crowded, but Now's Berry Farm also has an indoor bakery. Now at the bakery, they sell cinnamon rolls, they sell honey, they sell cookies, they have cakes, all kind of pastries, all kinds of things like that. Now, you could go to Now's Berry Farm, and there's no line. There's never a line or a crowd to go pick strawberries outside on the field, because you're out there literally leaning down and picking up a strawberry out of the strawberry field, put it into your basket. It's never crowded to go do that. But to get the bakery, the line can be super long, especially early in the season. So one time I went down there, it was early in the season, and it was a super long line. I mean, the line was like out of the door. It was way out the door, and it was snaking around. It was a really long line. It didn't seem like it would take that long. I said maybe it'll take 30 minutes. I ended up standing in that line for 4 hours. Yes, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 hours stood in this line. And here's the reason why I stood in the line for so long. Because you're like, Dre, why would you stand in line for 4 hours? Here's why. Because when I was about 10 minutes in, I said, all right, it's only been 10 minutes. Then when it got to 30 minutes, it was only 30 minutes. When we got to an hour, I said, all right, I've been here an hour. I might as well just keep standing in line. I already stood here an hour. I might as well just keep standing here. And then that hour turned to 2, same reason. 2 hours turned to 3, same reason. 3 hours turned to 4, same reason. I already been standing here all this time. I might as well not give up what I've already invested. That is the sunk cost fallacy. That is a stupid way of thinking. And I have been guilty of it just as much as you have been guilty of it. But hopefully, since we're all getting conscious about it and talking about it here today, we don't do this too much more since we're thinking about it. This, again, it occurs when people stay in dead-end jobs, they stay in relationships, or you eat a whole box of candy simply because you already ate 80% of the candy up to this point. We are all susceptible to the sunk cost fallacy, okay? Everybody is. But here's your new mindset that might help you avoid the sunk cost fallacy hurting you. Just because money and time are invested does not mean that you need to keep doing the thing. Let me say it again, just in case you didn't hear it. Just because money and time are invested in something does not mean you need to keep doing the thing. Yes, you started doing the thing. Yes, you have already invested in the thing, but just because you invested in it doesn't mean you can't cut your losses. That's what we call this. We call this cutting your losses. Any of you ever been to a casino and gambled? And you gambled away, let's say you lost $100 already. You still got more money in your pocket that you could gamble. You don't want to lose any more than $100, but you're like, damn, I already lost $100. Let me keep gambling. Let me see if I can make my $100 back. Don't do that. All right, that is what we call chase betting. And chase betting, casinos, they bank on people chase betting because the games are already set up for you to lose. The games are already set up for casinos to beat you. So when you chase bet, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose. And if you got 1,000 people chase betting it all over the casino on a given day, a few people might make their money back, maybe even come up on top, but most of the people are going to lose. And the casinos bank on this, and this is why casinos never go out of business from losing bets. If they go out of business, it ain't because they're losing too many bets. The sunk cost fallacy it gets its hooks into everybody. And it's a psychological challenge that people have to get over. Just because money and time are invested does not mean you need to keep doing the thing. If something is not working, either A, fix it, or B, get rid of it. But if you can't do either, cut your losses, take it as a lesson, and move on. I heard Tim Ferriss, who's the author of the 4-Hour series of books, he talked about this, that when he wanted to get into investing, business investing, because he had not, he didn't have an MBA from a business master's degree from college. He went to college, but he didn't have a business master. I don't know what he majored in. But he said when he got into investing, he decided that he would take, let's say, $100,000, and he was going to invest it in, he was going to take that money and put it into a few investments. And he decided that he would look at that $100,000 as him investing in his education. In other words, the same $100,000 that he would have spent paying for college, he would use that $100,000 and invest in some businesses. So that, and the reason why he told himself this is to put himself in a certain frame of mind, that if all of those businesses went to zero after Tim invested in them, he wouldn't be mad that he had quote unquote lost his $100,000, because he was looking at it as, I'm paying for a business degree. I'm just going to get my business degree in the real world instead of getting it in a classroom. So this $100,000, if it happens to turn around and make me money, great. But if I make zero from this and all my $100,000 goes to zero, that's fine, because that's the same thing that would have happened had I went to college. I would have gave the school $100,000 and not got any money back. So it's the exact same thing that would happen with me getting into the investment world. And that's a better way of looking at the things that you're investing in. I look at this as an investment. I put this money in. If I make money back, fine. If I don't, then I can just say I learned something. Whenever for example, when I do advertising, and I got that idea from Tim, this is over 10 years ago, I got that idea from Tim, and I love it, and that's why I'm sharing it with you. Whenever I do advertising, I'm running a new ad campaign. Sometimes an ad campaign is working, and sometimes an ad campaign is not working. And from week to week, day to day, this can change. Trust me, it can change. So whenever I run an ad and it isn't working, let's say I spent $100 on an ad and I'm not getting the ROI, I didn't make my $100 back, that's the clear way I measure my ROI, then I say, all right, that was $100 that I spent to get a business lesson. I spent $100 to learn something about why this ad in this combination to this audience with this ad creative does not work. And when it does work, then I made money on my investment. I made money on my knowledge investment. That's the way you want to look at the cost that you put into things, but do not chase a sunk cost. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is how to free yourself from the sunk cost fallacy. Number 2, completing or continuing something that is not helping you will not make it start helping you. If something is not working, finishing it is not going to make it start working all of a sudden just because you finished it. Continuing to do something that you have already decided isn't working is not going to make it start magically working. This is why you need to be operating by accurate formulas. And we got a whole episode coming on accurate formulas very soon. What I mean is, whenever you start to do anything, you need to ask yourself before you begin, how will I measure the results of this activity? How will I know if this is getting me where I want to go? How will I know if this is worth it for me? If you don't have a measurement for how you know something is worth it, then how will you know when to cut your losses and stop doing it, or if it's working or if it's not working? If you don't have a measurement, you need a way of looking at it and saying, okay, if I get this much of it, then that means it's working. If it's below this number, that means it's not working. How will you know? And it doesn't even have to be a number, but you need to have some way of measuring the results of your efforts. If you're eating a meal, for example, and your stomach has given you the signal, given a signal to your brain that you're full, you are not hungry anymore. Finishing the food on your plate, even though you're already not hungry anymore, finishing the food on your plate is not going to feed any of the starving kids in Africa or China. It's not going to feed a homeless shelter in your town. All right, none of those things are going to happen, even though many of us grew up being told that by our parents, right? There are starving kids in Africa and people starving in the streets in China, so we need to eat all the food on our plates. Eating the food on your plate is not going to feed another person. It may make you feel good that you ate all the food on your plate, but you feeling good ain't feeding the homeless man across the street. Okay, it's not going to put food in the stomach of other people. This is just an absolute fact that, again, many of us have been emotionalized with the belief that we have to eat everything we have because it's going to help somebody else, when it in fact does not. You must develop the discipline to, in this case, push away from the table, and metaphorically push away from the table. Be willing to walk away from a sunk cost when you have made the decision that this thing should not be pursued any further. We call this walking away in strength. I talk about this in episode 1662, what it means to walk away in strength. Because some people will call this, they have been emotionalized and socialized to call it quitting. And nobody wants to quit, right? Because we heard quitters never win and winners never quit. So you need to understand the concept that walking away in strength is different than quitting. And I explain it again in episode 1662. You got to be able to metaphorically walk away from something when it's not working anymore without feeling bad about yourself or beating yourself up about the fact that you decided to walk away. Because smart people know when to walk away from something. Do you think Warren Buffett stays in an investment when he realizes the investment isn't working anymore? No, he gets rid of it. This is what smart people do. Do you think a professional athlete who has a trainer and they try a new training technique and is making an athlete worse, they're slower, they're weaker, they're not performing as well based on this new training technique, do you think they're going to just keep doing it? Well, we already started it, we might as well keep doing it. Of course not. They would ruin their entire career if they did that. So you should be looking at things the exact same way. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how to free yourself from the sunk cost fallacy. Number 3, the most successful people in life that you know of are people who implement quickly, they have methods for measuring the results of their efforts, and they make decisions quickly about what is working and what's not working because they have a method to measure their results, and they are very, very quick to press the delete button. They have a quick trigger for the delete button. What does that mean when I say a quick trigger for the delete button? Let me just explain all of these things I just said. Implementing fast. All right, everybody knows what that means. Everybody knows what the word implement means. I talked about implementation in episode number 2133, implementation over invention. Episode 1560, relentless implementation. Episode 1445, why you need to implement with speed. Episode 1392, fast implementation is a requirement. So if you don't know what implementation means, I just gave you 4 episodes. You go listen and find out what it means. Most successful people put their ideas into action quickly. They have methods for measuring their results. In other words, they have a way of knowing, how do I know if this thing is working or not working? What does quote unquote working mean for me? How do I measure it and how do I know? They have answers to those questions. The most successful people do this. They also make decisions quickly about what's working and what's not working. And when they notice that something's not working, they very quickly, not a week later, not a day later, they don't think about it. They get rid of anything that is not working. They get rid of it fast. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of these things are you doing? How quickly are you implementing? Do you have methods for measuring the results of your work? Do you make quick decisions about what's working and what's not? And do you delete things that don't work? Now, I know for a fact, because I talk to people every single day, whether it's through email, DM, text, in my masterminds, I know for a fact that many people struggle with all 4 of these, let alone 1 or 2 or 3 of them. Many people don't have any of these in place. They don't implement, let alone implement quickly. They don't have a method for measuring whether something's working or not. They don't make quick decisions about whether something's working or not. And when something's not working, they just keep trying it. They are victims of the sunk cost fallacy. They just keep working on something that is clearly not working, even though they can see that it's not working. Because many people get emotionally attached to their ideas when your idea is not you. Your idea is just a thought that you had. Successful people don't have any of these problems. And I just gave you the formula to fix. Notice that of these 4 elements, 3 of them involve speed and decisiveness. Most successful people move quickly and they're decisive about how and when they move and where they're going. Unsuccessful people, him and Hall, they take a long time to make decisions, and when they finally get around to doing something that the successful person already did, it takes 6 months longer to actually do it. These slow implementations and decisions accumulate and compound on top of each other, so you're basically costing yourself your most valuable resource, which is time. Also note that nothing that I said here in this 3rd point has anything to do with you being intelligent, doesn't have anything to do with access to resources, none of that, which is the normal excuses that people have, right? That they don't have time, they don't know something, or they don't have resources. None of these things have anything to do with any of that. The normal excuses people have are not really the reasons why they're not doing things. Is their indecision and their lack of speed of implementation. This is all about being decisive, making fast decisions, and moving on to the next thing when the current thing is not working. And knowing, how do you know if something is working or not? Anybody who can hear my voice right now is fully capable of doing everything that I just said. The question is, will you do it? And if you want some help doing this, and not only help doing it, but also help putting it in place and measuring it and knowing what's the next thing to try when the current thing is not working, you need to join me in my mastermind. I keep telling you about it because that's the next place to work with me and go to the next level from what you're hearing here on the show. How you can implement these things you hear me talk about. I'm giving you the game. How do you implement this game and actually make it work for you in your specific situation? That's why you join my mastermind. But let me recap today's class and I'll tell you about that in a second. Topic here today is how to free yourself from the sunk cost fallacy, defined as a cost that has already been incurred and that cannot be recovered. In economic decision making, sunk costs are treated as bygone and not taken into consideration when deciding whether to continue an investment project. Point number one, in professional sports, often players with higher salaries get more playing time. A study has shown this. Scholastic athletes tell me the same thing, that the more known player or the player with more seniority, even when they're not performing as well, get more opportunities than other players. This is a real thing. Sunk costs affect everybody. The sunk cost fallacy affects a whole bunch of people. There's people who stay in jobs or relationships when they know they shouldn't be in them anymore. Here's the new mindset. Just because you have invested money and time in something does not mean you should keep investing money and time in something. That's dumb. If it's not working, get rid of it or fix it. Point number two, completing or continuing something that is not helping you will not make it start helping you. If you're eating a meal and your stomach has told you that you're full, finishing that meal is not going to feed the homeless man under the bridge. You got to know when to walk away in strength and push away from the table, literally or metaphorically, from a situation when it's no longer serving you. I talked about this in episode 1662. And number three, the most successful people in life are people who implement quickly, have methods for measuring their results, and make decisions quickly about what's working and what's not, and they press the delete button quickly, fast. None of these involve anything about intelligence or access or resources. They involve being decisive and moving quickly, which is something everybody is capable of doing. Unsuccessful people just move too slowly. They are indecisive. They do not measure their results. And even when they realize that something needs to be done, they don't do it. Or when they finally do it, they've taken so long that all the opportunity has been wiped off the table. Anybody who can hear my voice right now is fully capable of doing this, and I will help you with doing it. Let me tell you 3 things to do right now. Number one, get my daily motivation text message by texting me at 305-384-6894. Number two, get my monthly Bulletproof Bulletin magazine mailed to your physical mailbox every single month. I get your first issue free. Go to bulletproofbulletin.com. And number three, join my Bulletproof Mastermind, where I will help you implement anything you ever heard me talk about here on this show, how to get measurements for it, how to get decisive, how to get clear on what's working and what's not working. And you can network with a group of hand-picked professionals who are as serious about their game as you are. That's at workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.